Hi Holly, it's nice to meet you today, and I just wanted to talk briefly about burnout, because I know that you've experienced burnout and also you have experienced hypothalamic amenorrhea as well, and just how it ties into your work. So could you just let us know a bit about you really, and about your story?
Thank you. Yeah, well, firstly, thank you so much for having me, Tash, because it is really, really lovely to be chatting to you. I'm really, really supportive of everything that you're doing in your field as well.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm a registered nutritionist and a clinical nutritional therapy practitioner with, as you said, a speciality in hypothalamic amenorrhea. And I also work sort of more broadly at the intersection between hormones and mental health in women. Premenopausal women generally, but I do also work with women post-menopause as well. I'm registered in the UK, as you can probably tell, with the British Association for Nutrition and Lifestyle Medicine, and I'm also a corporate wellbeing consultant, specifically a female wellbeing consultant. So I'm trying to bring a lot more of that awareness around the female cycle and how it influences our sort of our energy and performance in the workplace. I used to be a yoga teacher and do various other things in the corporate world, but for various reasons, which I'll chat about, I took a massive pivot in my career to do what I'm doing today. So do you want me to go into my story as well?
Go into HA/burnout. Yeah, let's just hear a bit about your journey.
Of course. So I guess really growing up, I've always been very sensitive. I was always a very sensitive child. And I was really susceptible to psychological and emotional stress from an early age. And I think I've certainly come to learn a lot more about why that might have been the case from a biochemical and a physiological point of view. But essentially, so I've always had this conscientious nature. And when I went to university, so I did a master's degree in Edinburgh. So I was up there for quite a long time. I was quite a long way away from home. And I think that transition was a bit of a trigger for me in a lot of ways. It shifted a lot of stuff for me. I had really high expectations of myself, as I'm sure you know all about, and experienced, I had some personal relationship challenges, some family issues at the time that led me to seek out a coping mechanism. And running was my main thing. I really fell in love. Yeah, we can see where this is going now with HA, certainly. So I was running a lot, and I quickly got really fit, and I felt really good about that. But over time, I evolved this new identity and this mentality around that was helping me to cope, and it was quite difficult to not do it or to extricate myself from that. So it was draining to me energetically and from a nutrient level as well. Then at the same time, I guess, sort of bring me up to sort of where I am now, I'd always been fascinated by nutritional science. I'd had a really, really, we were just chatting before this, I'd had a really rural upbringing. So I grew up on a tree nursery surrounded by fruit and ornamental trees, and I spent my weekends, like picking fruit and vegetables. And it was just, it was lovely. It was just amazing. My favorite subject was chemistry at school, and then my mum was just this amazing cook. So she would be cooking with, she'd be blending up garlic leaves and making courgette cakes, and I'm pretty sure she came up with the cauliflower rice thing, or cauliflower, before anyone else did.
Yeah, so kind of healthy in a way then.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say, it's funny you should say that. I would say my mum is a very kind of French cook in nature. So she used a lot of butter and a lot of, it was always lavish and kind of, it was always about flavor. But yeah, for sure, there was never, we were eating vegetables as very, very small children. And we never had any issues with eating our veg. And we always just had to try it. And if we didn't like it, we didn't have to eat it, but we had to try everything. So she would always, we would always eat with my parents when we were little. So definitely really, really, really invested in nutrition from an earlier age. And at university, I was reading a lot around the subject, so I wasn't studying it at the time. I wasn't doing my master's in nutrition back in those days. But I became really fascinated with phytonutrients and the impacts of certain foods, on our cells and our brain chemistry and our mental health as well. And the flip side to that was that for a time, for sure, my early 20s especially, I was experiencing little spurts of orthorexia, as I was just coming to learn about food and not really appreciating all different types of foods and having them in the balanced way that I would now do. So that was definitely a factor. And then to skip forward into my career, I'd landed myself in a series of jobs that were, for me, tremendously stressful. And I think part of that was due to, and this is where we'll talk about this with burnout, but I was sacrificing a lot of my own interests, my values and my philosophies to sort of please other people, which is no bad thing. We all have to sort of put ourselves aside in times of our life, but I think for me it became very clear that I needed to follow my passion, and this is the period of time where I really did burn out. And I came off the pill. I noticed I didn't get a period. And it took me a couple of years to get it back and really, really research and troubleshoot what was going on. But I had started training at this time. So I went sort of part-time working initially to go back and train for a number of years. After year 2, I had to give up all work because the studying was getting too intense. So I did that and recovered at the same time and did my training to be a nutritional therapist and nutritionist. And yeah, that's basically it. I think.
Yeah, that's interesting. So the burnout kind of stage happened around your period loss, or just before that, or did they kind of like intertwine?
They were both happening at the same time. Yeah. So they're linked. And again, we can talk about that as well. But the burnout is linked to excessive or prolonged stress. So it's an end stage kind of mental health or issue. Whereas hypothalamic amenorrhea is also another consequence, isn't it, of excessive and prolonged stress. So definitely happening at the same time. But I didn't really appreciate what was, the burnout side of things is really interesting, because I didn't really, I've had to look back and see, oh, that was happening. Because at the time it's hard to see that's what's happening.
So what actually is happening? So what is burnout? What does it actually look like?
So burnout, it's a really interesting question, because burnout actually, I have 2 answers to this question, because from a medical point of view, the medically classified form of burnout is basically an occupational phenomenon. So it's something that happens, it's a mental health issue that happens as a result of prolonged and excessive stress that's related to your work life or your occupation. So we tend to put it in that camp. I mean, that's what the WHO classified it as 3 years ago, 2019.
So purely work-based?
Yes, occupational based. So I guess you could, if you're a young mum, you could still burn out, because, being a mum is your occupation. So it's an occupational based phenomenon. And what it looks like is complete exhaustion, as the name might signify, is feeling completely wiped out. Loss of motivation, feeling overwhelmed, but also quite cynical about your job and your life, and you may feel a little bit hopeless or despondent, or this is all linked to the fatigue. But when we think about stress, we're thinking about when you're over engaging, right? You think about it as being something where your emotions are a little bit overactive, and there's anxiety there, and it's over engagement. Whereas burnout is loss of engagement. it's blunted emotions, it's that feeling quite numb. Yeah, exactly. Feeling a little bit numb. But yeah, they're both both chronic stress. Well, burnout is a result of chronic stress. So it's definitely, that's what one wet place that you end up.
Yeah. So when we say chronic stress, we're talking about high levels of cortisol? Is that what's happening?
Yeah, so not just cortisol. Cortisol's the main one, but glucocorticoids generally. So they're all of the different hormones that we secrete from our adrenal glands, our adrenal cortex. So yeah, I mean, chronic stress is essentially, if we think about the fact that our modern lives are, we wake up to an alarm clock and we're subjected to a lot of information and a lot of noise and traffic jams and long to-do lists and emails, and then there are things like not real stress, but traumas and bereavement and relationship problems. We're actually subjected to lots and lots of stress today in our modern world. Constant, exactly. And the problem is that the body or the brain responds with the same hormonal, neurological, physiological response. It's the same response. So chronic stress is just simply that. It's exposure to these stresses. And unfortunately, the body responds with the same HPA axis, activation of the sympathetic nervous system, secretion of these hormones, which, if it's short-lived, so if it's an acute stress response and it's short-lived, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. It's not damaging to us, but it's the constant hyperactivation of the HPA axis, which is our stress response system, which can then lead to dysregulation of that whole axes, and then eventually adrenal exhaustion, where you get hypoactivation of it. So you're not producing enough of cortisol, for example, and that can be show up as burnout. It can show up as lots of other things as well, but it can show up as burnout. Okay,
so it's basically a step ahead of being just stressed out. So you get to the point where you feel so fatigued that you can't really even get out of bed. This is what the main signs are. So obviously you can say I feel stressed, because most people feel stressed, but it's that next level of stress.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess you may still feel anxious, you may still feel overwhelmed, but there's that level of exhaustion there that's impacting your motivation for life. That's what's really critical, I think, in burnout, and what differentiates it from just chronic fatigue, I guess. So
what are like the steps that we might kind of like red flags, I suppose, in our lives that might pop up that we're like, oh, we might actually be getting too close to burnout here? Or if you're seeing your friend, even, is it just a massive dip in motivation to do things and energy? Is that like the first sign?
I'd say that's probably if you have lost your motivation, that's probably where you're very, very close to burnout. Generally speaking, if you're prone to stress and you're feeling stress a lot, that is in itself a red flag, because if that continues, you're at risk of burnout.
Even lost period, right?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say, definitely.
Aren't you? Your body's like, I can't give anymore.
100%. And hypothalamic amenorrhea is one other consequence of high levels of stress hormones, and so it's definitely, it in itself is a red flag. Procrastination is probably one, even though we all do this. It's a really good example of where you're taking longer to get things done, and if that's not normal for you, that's probably a good pointer, a good warning sign. Feeling withdrawn from responsibilities, feeling tired all of the time, which you might feel that with HA anyway. Just every day is a bad day, these kind of things. So that's a slightly more mental health related, but certainly for women, missing cycles, irregular cycles, long cycles, infrequent cycles, a low sex drive, getting more colds and flu, and susceptibility to infection. Yeah, because the immune system is just another, you know, we can just put that on the page as well, as that's another thing that is going to result of prolonged stress. It's going to be immune suppression.
Digestion, even.
Absolutely.
Linked, isn't it, really?
Absolutely. And you know, sorry, yeah.
No, carry on.
100% digestion, and it really, how that shows up in the individual is you know, it's not necessarily constipation, but it could be, you know, the way that the stress, the HPA axis affects and the gut brain axis, the way that the brain affects the gut is very, very individualized. So it could be you know, IBS type symptoms cycling between kind of constipation, diarrhea, but definitely, you know, when the sympathetic nervous system is on a hyperdrive, and that's our stress response, where in opposition to the parasympathetic side of our nervous system, which is our chill out kind of mode. You know, when we're too much in that sympathetic state, then we're not supporting digestion, because digestion needs us to be relaxed.
Yeah, rest and digest mode. Yeah,
totally. Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So how long can burnout even last then? I guess it literally varies upon the person.
Yeah, I think true burnout, like clinical, like if you were, you know, you were going to look at, and I think burnout, it is complicated, because I think that the symptoms of burnout do show up in other issues, right? They do show up in thyroid issues, or, you know, adrenal dysfunction, or a sex hormone imbalance, you know. So is it true burnout? You'd probably have to get, you know, some tests done to look at, you know, to rule out all of these other things. But burnout, it can last a long time. If you were, my other half actually has burnt out in the past, and it took him 6 months of no work. He had to give up his job for 6 months.
Wow.
Yeah, it was really, really, and that was a massive wake up call for me, because I hadn't realized actually how, you know, even in my practice, how long it can take. And
well, it's similar with how long it can take to get your period back too. If you feel like you're in a state of burnout and you have to like stop working out, etc., it can take a while as well. Yeah, for your body needs that rest, and it can take a good few months.
Yeah, so months. Yeah, exactly. And I think that is, you've got to be realistic about it and take the pressure off yourself. You know, and part of that character, somebody who's more likely to burn out could be somebody who's quite like someone with HA, is that's that person. You need to start, you know, taking care of yourself, and actually understanding yourself a little bit better, and that can take time.
Yeah. So you said right at the beginning, I feel like I might have interpreted it wrong, but I think you said that you naturally were more sensitive to stress.
Yeah.
In both kind of ways. How did you feel that? Like, how did you know that? Did you just feel stressed most of the day? Like,
no, I didn't feel stressed most of the time. But when I was growing up, I really did just get really anxious as a child over absolutely nothing. And I think later on in my life, and actually when I was studying to be a nutritionist, you know, we were, I think in my third or fourth, I think I was doing, we did these genetic tests, and I was really interested to, you know, see some of the things that were going on for me. So I did some tests and found that I had a SNP in an enzyme called COMT, which is catecholon methyltransferase, which is an enzyme in your it's in your gut and in your brain, and it helps break down things like adrenaline, noradrenaline, and also dopamine. So that, and alongside various other tests that I was doing on myself to figure things out, it became quite clear that, you know, my ability to break down adrenaline is like very likely to be something that's drives my, you know, my stress levels. You know, but actually luckily, you know, there are sort of nutritional things that you can do to sort of readdress that balance and things like that. So just making sure I had enough of the cofactors for that enzyme to actually to make it work properly, addressing some lifestyle stuff. But no, there are all sorts of reasons. You know, there are genetic reasons. There are factors like, you know, if your mum is stressed whilst you're in her womb. So the maternal stress factor is a big one in terms of how the baby's brain develops. It can develop to be a little bit more hypersensitive. Certain types of certain areas in the brain can grow a little bit stronger. The neural pathways in the amygdala can strengthen even in a baby. We've got research to show that kind of those things can happen. So there's all sorts of reasons why stress can affect you more than someone else.
Totally.
You know,
I resonate with that. I kind of feel like I get stressed more than other people, and even my friends would say that as well. That any little kind of thing, which again would tie in with HA, I suppose, that kind of personality type.
100%, yeah. And of course, it's never just one thing, because the way that we move and the way that we eat is also going to impact our stress levels. But there are our gut health is going to impact our stress levels as well, because if there's any if there's any inflammation there, we know that inflammation in the gut can trigger neuroinflammation, so inflammation in the brain, which can make you more impulsive or anxious. So there's so many things, isn't there, when we're thinking about stress, why we might be more susceptible to it. So yeah.
Okay, so let's say we are burnt out, or we're feeling like we're getting towards burnout. What kind of tips or things can we do? Even, I guess, even boundaries might be a thing to bring up, like boundaries with yourself, saying to people, no, I can't go to this, that, like filling up my diary too much. Is that even to play?
That's definitely a big tick there for that one. Yeah, I would say boundaries is a huge one. Learning to say no, which can be much harder to do. Much easier to say and much harder to do. And sadly, I think often, with our health, we often need a wake-up call to help us reassess those boundaries. And often, it's very difficult. It's very difficult. And I work with women who are really stressed out. It's very difficult to say to somebody who's really stressed out to just say no, or just go. And you're not that person. And you've got to honor the person that you are, and that's quite tricky. But definitely setting boundaries is a huge one. I think understanding what your big why is in life, and trying to align something to that. So even if you can't align your job or your work to that, then is there something that you can do to give you that sense of joy and purpose in your life is really important. Again, possibly easier said than done, but hopefully not, because you don't have to do what you and I have done. Possibly, your story, I know, I don't know as much about your story, but I'm sure that you're doing what you love to do and what you want to do, because it's really important to you.
Yeah.
Like I am, so it's finding that purpose. And I guess building in, and there's so many things you can do from a nutritional point of view. Exercise is an interesting one, so we can talk about that one with burnout. But building in activities every day to support your stress, as almost like you're exercising it as a muscle, is super important. Little things like spending time in nature, which has been shown in research to actually help your stress.
Like grounding.
100%.
Yeah.
Even looking at photos of nature, apparently. I don't know. That's been
it is quite a calming effect, isn't it? Or hearing like water. Even taking some deep belly breaths. So actually getting your parasympathetic mode turned on and getting your belly nice and big, and just kind of taking those breaths.
Absolutely, and it's so underestimated, but that's such a powerful technique.
We're such shallow breathers, aren't we? Which is like panicky, and that's how we run off.
Exactly, and all our stress receptors are up here, and if we're not deep belly breaths, we're going to activate the vagus nerve, which is the 10th cranial nerve, which is linked to our rest and digest mode. So little things like that, human touch, when we hug each other, oxytocin, being around animals,
and pets,
pets, dogs, breathing, meditation, mindfulness, that kind of stuff I find is interesting one, because again, a lot of the women that I work with, it's just if I say meditation, it's just like a no, or it's like they really struggle with it. And I actually really struggled with meditation, probably because I'm that kind of person. I really found it difficult. So doing more, trauma release type work, or massage, or something that actually physically is going to relax you is better. It can be better for some people, because if you're not that person that can sit still, fine, you may need to learn that. But right now, is it going to work for you? It might stress you out more.
Being so in your mind. So kind of touching upon the exercise aspect, so obviously exercise is seen as like a healthy thing to do, but then obviously we know the other side of it, where it can be a bit too much for your body, and like increase circulating cortisol when you're working out. So I guess how do you go about with that, with burnout? Would you just recommend walking, I suppose, like kind of keeping it to a HA protocol in a way?
I think that I think it has to be taken on an individual basis, because looking at some of the kind of clinical stuff about what's going on with someone can help you make that decision. Most of the time with HA, I'm not asking women to stop exercise, which would go against a lot of other practitioner or other views of this. But I have my reasons for that, and it tends to be the type of women that I'm working with where we don't do that for a reason. But when it comes to burnout, and if we were going to, HA isn't a mental health issue, but the research that is supporting stress management and mental health, it's only really moderate exercise that is shown to be effective. So 150 minutes a day over 5 days. So that's only 30 minutes a day. Of moderate to light exercise, and that is, it might be walking, it might be light jogging, as long as you're not getting, getting your heart rate up too much, or a little bit of resistance work, whatever it is. But the key thing is that you can still hold a conversation in that time
while doing it.
And it's moderate. It's not actually that hot, it's that exercise is not actually a lot. But when it comes to high intensity, high volume and high intensity exercise, there simply isn't any research supporting adding that to an already stressed life load. So it's not that it's dangerous, or but there is no evidence to say that that's safe to do. And certainly if hypothalamic amenorrhea is something you're experiencing, then I think exercise has to be considered. It's got to be looked at, and is it working? Is this actually working for you? I mean, exercise, it's really tricky, because in one sense exercise can actually bring an acute stress response to its physiological conclusion. It can actually bring you down and actually relax you. And there is some research, unfortunately only done in men, that shows that
I feel like that happens a lot of things are just men,
unfortunately.
Fasting.
Hopefully that will change, but certainly still at the moment, we're relying a lot on those kinds of studies, that the fitter you are, the less cortisol you produce overall when you're exercising. So it's difficult to say that, because someone with HA might grab hold of that and be like, right, that's what I need to get really fit. But there is another side to the coin. It's not just no exercise, and I think we've got to be careful about, there are benefits to exercise with stress, but certainly adding high volume, high intensity exercise to somebody who's burnt out, it's just just no. It's not. It's going to work. It's not going to work in your favor. I think that would be the answer to that. Sorry, long-winded.
Oh no, that's good. It makes total sense. Cool. Is there anything else you want to bring up about burnout at all, or anything that people might want to know? I'm just wondering if even if I went through it, it kind of feels like, I guess people with HA, in a way, you do go through it.
It would be logical.
Yeah, but then not to the extent where I couldn't leave my bed kind of thing.
Yeah. It's logical to think that way. And, burnout in the general population is, relative energy deficiency in nutrition and dietetics, or overtraining in the sporting world, or red S in the sporting world. So it's basically, I do think that clinically it's the same. In most cases, it's the same issues. It's the same physiological stuff that's going on. So I don't, I think it's just that the WHO has complicated it by making it its own kind of, occupational issue, whereas I don't think that that's necessarily very helpful. I would say, and I'm biased because, and I know you will be as well, but I think nutrition plays a massive part in burnout. I think the way that we're fueling, balancing our blood sugar in the right way, certain types of nutrients, omega-3, magnesium, vitamin C, when we're under a lot of stress, we urinate out a lot of vitamin C, for example, and we need that. Yeah, we need vitamin C to support our adrenal cortex. So there are all sorts of nutrients. Vitamin D is another one, low levels of vitamin D are associated with anxiety, stress, depression, internalizing problems. So there's all sorts of things that, we should be thinking about, and we can be looking at therapeutically. Adaptogens as well.
Yeah, I was going to worry about that actually. Yeah, herbs. Do they even kind of touch the surface, adaptogens, when you are at that level of fatigue and things like that?
Yeah, that's a really, really,
really,
I think that's really, really pertinent of you to say that, because I think that at the end of the day, if you're not resting enough, you're not getting the right amount of sleep, are these things no, they're not going to. No supplement is. But they can certainly help. And I actually took reishi, which is a mushroom extract, when I was burnt out. And I was burnt out because I was really getting sick, actually. I was getting a lot of coughs and colds and stuff. And so taking reishi for my immune system, but also my stress, I couldn't swear by it. And I used to use it quite a lot with clients. Most of the clients I'm working with, funnily enough, at the moment, don't really seem to have immune issues, but it can be a really good one. But then looking at your gut, probiotics, prebiotics, looking at things, actually doing a gut test, looking at what the microbiome's like, look at the health of the gut lining. That could actually be a massive, really hold you back, because that's a big mediator in something like burnout and HA. So there's all sorts of stuff from a nutritional point of view, and really very much it has to be tailored to the individual. So there's no point in running out and buying bottles of this and that. Yeah, absolutely. But no, I'm a big believer in the power of it to accelerate recovery and to set you up for life, to manage yourself better and to strengthen yourself and improve your resilience.
And like going through these things like HA and like even burnout that you experience, now you know the signs as well for your body, like you know your body way better, and you know the signs of when you're just going off track. So it is helpful in a way to go through these experiences and see something positive from it.
So do you think you experienced burnout? I know you just said you think maybe, but it wasn't that you couldn't get out of bed, but
I guess so, because I had to. In my journey, I stopped exercise completely. I used to go to the gym about 4 times a week, and then I dropped it down to 2 times a week for about 4 months maybe, and then I just cut it out completely, all on my own accord of doing this. And then I upped my calories a bit, but I think it was the stress aspect even more so, because I am quite a stress head, and just like needed to always do things at that time that they needed doing. Like I couldn't wait. Like if something needed to be done, I wouldn't write on my to-do list to do in a few days' time. Like I would have to do it then and there. And I got into meditation quite a bit and breath work, which is why I then delved into the breath work training that I now do breath work with some clients too, because I felt like that really helped me kind of manage my stress levels, and even on like an energetic level, I think it kind of unblocked some stagnant energy in my womb space, I kind of felt. So it was the aspect of stress, I think. And even now, I said, I think it was yesterday, I made a little post about it, that even though I've had my period back for quite a long time, I started introducing a bit more exercise into my life. Or is it frozen?
Oh, no, you're still all right.
I think so. So I started introducing some more exercise into my life, just 2 times a week, and I was also having some coffee and going into some other bad habits. And yeah, my ovulation was like running away from me, and I ovulated 3 weeks late recently. So yeah, even now I'm noticing, I guess, stress, and like you said, being sensitive to stress. I do feel like I'm pretty sensitive to stress.
Yeah.
But like I said, going through these things, I can now pick up on these
Exactly.
little tweaks that I need to make, and self-care. I feel like I need to make self-care a priority, maybe more so than other people need to make self-care a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really love that you said how much you feel that stress is a factor for you, because I'm worried. I'm a little bit nervous around the whole. I think food and exercise is 100 is where you have to start, and it usually is. You know, I'm probably, I don't put a number on it, 80%, 90% of the time it's food and exercise, but stress. I think psychological stress is a massive part of HA, and I think that it's, you know, it's definitely talked about and it's put in there. But you know, I think if we could really get a handle on that, then recovery, you know, a woman's recovery journey would look totally different.
Yeah, because you get I hear this from clients as well, and I felt the same. You get more stressed out because you haven't got a period as well. It's such a hard balance, because every day that goes past, every time you go to the toilet and just there's nothing there, you get more stressed out, and it's not helpful. And like in my journey, I was constantly, because I was so interested and passionate about it, I was reading up everything, listening to every podcast, getting loads of books. And I suppose that's kind of not great as well, because I was constantly reading about periods. I just was stressing myself out in that respect.
And it's scary. I mean, you can read about, you know, my bone health, you know, I'm putting all this stuff, you know, cardiovascular and my mental, and it can be quite that can be quite, you know, you can think I've got it, you can have a bit of an alarmist reaction. I've got to get my period back now. And I can't, because there are all these barriers, and I feel like, you know, I it's very difficult to change your lifestyle. It's really hard, and we underestimate that, don't we? How it's hard to change a habit.
Oh, completely, yeah. It takes like 30, did it say 30 days or something? I can't remember.
Yeah, 21 days, 30 days, whatever. Yeah.
It's hard for sure. And when society kind of tells you a different thing, like you obviously shouldn't be seeing the weight go up or any load of rubbish.
That is a whole other conversation. Let's talk about weight.
So I guess it's just seeing the signs, isn't it? Just really trying to tune in with your body and see the signs that your body is giving you, so that it doesn't lead too much to that absolute fatigue and burnout.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So is there anything else you want to add to that?
No, I just wanted to say thank you for having me on. It's lovely.
No worries. Do you want to just let us know where we can find you as well?
Yeah, sure. The best place...
Where you can find you in the world and the internet.
Where you can find me in the world. Best place is probably my website, which is www.hollydunn.co.uk, which is being updated. I say being updated, I've been saying this for weeks and it's not being done. With a little bit more of a focus on HA, and there'll be more resources on HA, which there currently aren't many. And then Instagram I'm on. I haven't been doing a lot on there either, just because clinic's been so busy this year. I keep making this excuse on everything that I'm doing, but I will be sharing more on there soon. There's quite a lot on there already for certainly for stress management, HA related, but there'll be much more coming. And then if you're a corporate lady, I'm on LinkedIn, so LinkedIn's probably where I'm found.
Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks so much for your time today, Holly. It's lovely speaking with you.
You too. Thank you so much for having me, Tash. Great to be here.
No worries. Thanks.
Bye.